All right, we're going to try this again. We had a little audio issues on the first one. I'm hoping that the audio is working on this one. If someone in chat can let me know if audio is working correctly, please. Um, I know that on the first video, I had a few minutes of technical difficulty with the settings, making sure that everything was correct. I had some issues with chat. I've got chat working now. So I'm happy to say that I figured that setting out, but I don't want to waste any more time in the beginning of my videos going over technical stuff. I'm trying to figure this out and trying to get through it. And it looks like audio is working. So thank you for that, chat. I appreciate it. Anyways, uh, thankful for everybody that's given me a little bit of input, a little bit of comments, who all watched the first podcast. I appreciate it. My oldest son said that I needed a background, and my wife bought me this beautiful piece of artwork in the back. So I'm putting that up. So it's not just a blank wall. I appreciate that. I'm going to be, working on stuff every time, trying to be better every time and doing more stuff every time. So I really appreciate your comments, your feedback, anything that can be helpful is much appreciated. And like I said, this is going to be something I'm just going to be learning a lot, and I'm eager to learn and eager to do better and grow. And also just give you my opinions on my love for all things sports. So let me get this one going. We'll get started. And like I said, today we are going to be doing a Super Bowl preview, and we're going to discuss a couple of the big moves, I should say, that happened on the NBA trade deadline. And it was a crazy one. The only teams this year that haven't been involved in trades, I believe, are the Bulls and the Cavaliers. So that's unreal. There's 30 teams in the NBA. 28 of them have made a trade in this season, and the trade deadline was even crazier. And I'm going to focus on discussing the big trades that really have an impact. There's a lot of little moves, and we can spend all day on a whole pod going over all the moves and see how they affect each franchise. But today, with the Super Bowl on Sunday, and I really want to focus on the preview, I will go over a few of the big moves that happened in the NBA. So let's do that first before we get to the Super Bowl stuff. And let's talk about the big moves that happened this week. So the first one that I want to discuss is involving Kevin Durant. And the way I want you to think about this Kevin Durant move is what happened a few days ago when we discussed on the first pod, which was a Kyrie Irving trade to the Dallas Mavericks. It left Kevin Durant without a fellow superstar in the Nets. Obviously, the trade last year was sent Harden to the 76ers, and they got Ben Simmons in return. As we all know, Ben Simmons is not a superstar, even though he's paid like one. Ben Simmons is probably best coming off the bench for a team. Good defender, great passer, horrible shooter, and really can't be relied on. He's played very few games in the last few years. So the reason he has that horrible contract is the 76ers paid him and they should have. But anyways, so Kevin Durant's left all alone in the Nets. He's given a few days to decide before the trade deadline what he wants to do. There had been discussions from him and previous rumors from him that he wanted to play for the Suns, play with Chris Paul, Devin Booker, who I know he is friends with. And it finally came through that he wanted to push for the trade. And the Suns have a new owner that wants to make a big splash, wants to come in, start strong. And he pushed for this trade too. And this is what happened. So the Suns get Kevin Durant and TJ Warren. The Nets receive Mikal Bridges and Cameron Johnson and a bunch of picks, 4 first-round picks from Phoenix, a couple swaps in there as well. There was 2 other teams involved in this trade, the Bucks and the Pacers. The Bucks get Jay Crowder. Now, this is an important trade. Jay was on the Suns, going to the Bucks, and that's really going to help Giannis and the Bucks. Another wing defender, another guy that can shoot and help Giannis spread the floor. And then the Pacers get George Hill back, Ibaka, who I'm sure they're just going to cut for cash consideration, stuff like that, and Jordan Nwora, and some picks. But the big part of this is Kevin Durant going to Phoenix, which instantly catapults them to the favorite in the West. Now, the West previously, before this trade, had been kind of a mess. There's a bunch of teams, people thought that Kyrie was going to push the Dallas up towards the top, but not a clear favorite. You're not sure how that's going to work, as we discussed on Wednesday. So this move, though, makes the Suns the clear favorite in my mind. Steph's injury that happened a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago for the Warriors, keep him out of the All-Star game and not sure when he's going to come back, really affects the defending champs. So they did make a couple moves, nothing big, but I really feel like this lands the Suns right at the top. And they should be. And this puts a lot of pressure on Kevin Durant. Now, Kevin Durant and pressure is an interesting concept. Now, he's won 2 titles. He won with the not with the Suns, but with the Warriors in 17 and 18 when he was on that super team. But if you remember what happened the year before, the Thunder were up 3-1 in the Western Conference Finals, blew that lead to the Warriors. Warriors go on and lose to the Cavs in the finals. But the Thunder had a good team. Him and Westbrook, uh, they were up 3-1 in NBA basketball. Being up 3-1, as we know in the finals, it's only happened one time when the Cavs came back in that finals over the Warriors to come back from a 3-1 deficit. But up be a 3-1 and blow it. Now, what can you do? You can come back and work harder, or you could leave and join a super team like he did and join the Warriors, and it was easy. They won 2 titles. I think they only lost 1 game in those 2 finals appearances against the Cavs. And he won 2 finals MVPs. Then things got hard again. And what I mean by that, there was a little dissension. There was, remember the argument he had with Draymond on the sidelines. And then he left. And he goes to Brooklyn. And he tries to find his own super team. And they get Harden. And they get Kyrie. And it doesn't work out. Harden gets tired. He wants out. He goes to the 76ers. Kyrie gets tired. He wants out. He goes to the Mavs. So here he's on his 3rd super team. I mean, you could argue the Thunder were the super team too when he had Westbrook. I mean, and to call it super team, that's a name that's thrown around a lot, but a team with a lot of other superstars. When he's got a big 3 or a big 2 at least. And he's got, a big 3, you could say. Chris Paul, of course, is aging and not the player he once was, but he can still run an offense and dish out assists and get the team in good spots. But they do have DeAndre Ayton in center, and he's been playing great this year, and they have Devin Booker, who can score at will. So he's on another super team. Let's just say it. And they're going to be favorites in the West, and they should be. I'm being very curious, and when he comes back from injury, how he responds to this, because if they don't win at all, what does he do then? Does he want out again? I don't know. We'll see. All right. The other big trade I want to discuss is the one involving the Lakers. We all know LeBron passed Kareem for the scoring title. And he'd been frustrated that the Lakers didn't get Kyrie and he went to Dallas instead. He was very public about that. So the Lakers, under a lot of pressure to put some pieces around LeBron that make sense. And I feel like they did that. They made a big trade. Again, another 3-teamer, a 4-teamer, a lot of multi-team trades in the NBA. It's really very common just to get the money right. But the Lakers got D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt. They sent Russell Westbrook to the Jazz and a first-round pick, 2027. And then the Timberwolves get from the Jazz, they get Mike Conley and a couple second-round picks, 2 from the Jazz, 1 from the Lakers. So a lot of moving pieces there. But the key for the Lakers is they get rid of Westbrook, get that contract, and they give LeBron more shooters. Now, D'Angelo Russell is a streaky shooter, but he's a better shooter than Westbrook. Malik Beasley is a good shooter, and Jared Vanderbilt is a good defender. So they really improved their roster. They made a couple other deals too. They got rid of Patrick Beverley, sent him to Orlando, and got Mo Bamba, so another front court player to give the Lakers some better defensive and rebounding capabilities. Does this make them an instant contender? That really depends on Anthony Davis's health. If Anthony Davis can stay healthy, and they're so far back right now, they're a few games out of even being in the play-in. They're not going to get into the top 4. It's too late for that. They're probably going to have to get to the play-in, get themselves in, and then they're going to face a 1 or 2 seed. It's going to be really, really tough. But it gets LeBron back in the playoffs. It should. But the key to this all, even to make the moves, is Anthony Davis's health. He has to stay healthy for them to have a chance. When he was healthy, they won the bubble title, as we all remember. But that's what it's going to come down to. So a lot of moves. Like I said, there was a lot of moves, a lot of teams making little pieces that may or may not improve their team. It'll be interesting to see how that all pans out. I don't want to go into every little trade. Maybe we discuss more about what we see going forward in the NBA after the Super Bowl. But this is Super Bowl week. It's exciting. It's one of the best sports weeks of the year. A lot of anticipation, a lot going on. I hope everybody has a great time at the Super Bowl parties. But let's get into it. Super Bowl 57 happening on Sunday. Let's talk about Kansas City Chiefs against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I did a lot of research and I looked up a lot of information. I went through each team's season. They both ended up 14-3 in the regular season, got there different ways. But I want to go over a few pieces of stats, a little bit of history. For the Chiefs, this will be their 5th Super Bowl appearance. They lost Super Bowl I to the Green Bay Packers, the Vince Lombardi-led Green Bay Packers with Bart Starr. And then they came back and won Super Bowl IV over the Vikings. That was a Hank Stram-led Kansas City Chiefs back in the late 60s, early 70s. And then they had a 50-year drought. And then, of course, with the Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes pairing, they won Super Bowl 54, and then lost Super Bowl 55 to Tom Brady. For the Eagles, this will be their 4th appearance. They lost Super Bowl 15 back with Dick Vermeil and Ron Jaworski when they lost to the Oakland Raiders at that time, not the Los Angeles Raiders, Oakland Raiders in 1980. They lost Super Bowl 39 to Tom Brady. There's Tom Brady showing up again, just ruining 2 different franchises in 2 different ways. Lost Super Bowl 39 with Donovan McNabb and Andy Reid. That's why we're calling this one of the Reid Super Bowl. Lost Super Bowl 39 to them in a close one. And then, of course, they beat Tom Brady in Super Bowl 52 with Nick Foles in that incredible game, 41-33, recent history. So there's some players on both squads that have Super Bowl experience, right? Only 5 years removed from the Eagles from Super Bowl 52, so they still have some players on their team, obviously Kelsey and Lane Johnson and Fletcher Cox on the Eagles. So there's very key players with a lot of experience, and then there's tons of experience on the Chiefs, obviously, from Super Bowl 54 and 55. So these teams aren't new to the moment. Obviously, there is going to be some rookies and all those people that are going to be, nervous, excited. It's a different game. It's a different game. The timing of it is different. Halftime is twice as long. You're on the field for a lot. There's a lot more people on the field, a lot more press. It's 2 weeks to prepare. The whole setup of the Super Bowl is different, and it throws off your timing. And having a coach like Andy Reid, who's been there 3 times before, is probably a positive for the Chiefs versus Sirianni, who's in his first Super Bowl as head coach. If you've been through the system and been through what the preparation is for a Super Bowl and all that comes with it, there's a lot of press, a lot of stuff that your players have to be involved in that is something that people don't really think about. How much of that is a factor? Not sure. We've seen a lot of teams that make it to their first Super Bowl and win. So I'm not sure. I haven't lived through it myself. I'm not a player. But I can imagine it's a lot of distractions. So to limit those distractions and stay focused on the game, they are professionals. We'll see. But with both teams having players in that locker room that have been there before, I'm sure they'd had a lot of discussions about what to expect so those players could get through it. So little Super Bowl history for both. All right. Now I want to get into a little bit of stats for each team. The Eagles, let's go over them. Their offense ranked 5th in rushing yards, 8th in pass, and 3rd in total offense, and 3rd in scoring. Important to know. Their defensive rank was 1st in pass, which is impressive, 16th in rush, 2nd in total defense, 8th in scoring defense, and +8 in turnover differential. Okay, so they were in the top 5 in turnover differential. Important notes here. All right, Kansas City stats. Kansas City offensive rank 1st in pass, 20th in rush. And they were so good at passing that even though they were 20th in rush, they were still 1st in total offense. With the disparity between passing and rushing, 1st in scoring. Their defensive rank 19th in pass, 8th in rush, 11th in total defense, 16th in scoring defense. And here's the important one I want to bring up. They're -3 in turnover differential. Now, the thing that matters with turnover differential, you could have a team that turns over the ball tons, and that's why your turnover differential is low. The thing with the Chiefs is they didn't turn over the ball a lot. They turned over the ball about 20 times, which is probably close to league average. The problem is their defense didn't create a lot of turnovers. Not a lot of picks, not a lot of fumbles. They weren't too good at creating a lot of turnovers. So those turnovers obviously can really swing a game. and it's interesting to note and something to think about. Major injuries coming into the game. So everybody remembers Jalen Hurts hurting his shoulder, causing him to miss 2 games for the Eagles. He missed the game against the Cowboys, which they lost 40-34. In Dallas, they also missed him again the week after that when they lost to the Saints at home 20-10. And then he came back to win that game against the Giants to secure the 1 seed. But his shoulder was still hurt, and it was still hurt in the divisional round and the AFC Championship game. And now he's had 2 more weeks to heal. It's going to require some kind of therapy or surgery, probably late after the season. Not sure the level of it, but he's not 100%. And his throwing accuracy has been down since he hurt his shoulder. That injury came in that Bears game where he threw a couple picks and got hit. It didn't seem to affect him in the playoffs, but that's because he wasn't put in positions where he had to continue to throw. Both games they got up, and in the second half they just ran the ball. He wasn't put in positions where he had to carry his team on long drives and win game-winning drives. In fact, during the season, most of their passing came early in the game. If you look at the way the Eagles season went, a lot of their games, especially the ones where blowouts, is they built big leads through aggressive play in the first or second quarter, and then they just held on and put their defense in good leads. So if you think about the Eagles' pass rush, which has been amazing, but that's because a lot of times they were put in positions where teams were trying to come back. A good way to get pressures, a good way to get sacks is putting teams down 3 scores, and they're throwing the ball on every play. That means your defensive line can pin their ears back and go after the quarterback every play. They were number 1 in sacks and number 1 in pressures. They had 4 guys with 10-plus sacks, okay? That's a lot to have 4 guys with 10-plus sacks. I think they had 3 guys with 11, and Hassan Reddick had 16 sacks. So that's a lot of pressure, but that's because of a lot of positions they were put in. Like I said, they had a lot of big leads. When you have a team that's in a lead a lot, especially 2 scores by the second quarter or 3 scores by the third quarter, that defense, and they have a deep defensive line, right? They had, I think, 10 guys that at least had a sack. They are able to pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. So that stat's a little balloon because of how well they played offensively early in games. And it affects the way Jalen's stats look too, right? Because he wasn't throwing the ball, and affects the way they're able to run the ball. But their whole game plan coming into the Super Bowl for the Eagles will be to be aggressive, throwing the ball early, get a lead, and hold on to the ball and keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. So anyways, I got a little off track, but that was just what's going on. As far as injuries, yeah, he had his hurt shoulder. Lane Johnson has a groin injury he's playing through. He's doing well. Let's go to Kansas City and their injuries. Now, their injuries are a little more significant. Remember in the AFC title game, they lost their top 3 receivers. McCall Harmon is now done. He's on IR. They reactivated running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's going to be back and playing the game. They obviously will be playing Pacheco and Jared McKinnon mostly out of the backfield. Those guys have been great, especially in the second half of the season. McKinnon has been amazing as a receiver out of the backfield, and Pacheco has been good about running through between the tackles. But losing Hardman really hurts them because there's a lot of things they like to do creatively in the red zone, right? They will run a lot of misdirection option stuff. They will do a lot of fly sweeps, and Hardman was their best at running that because he's the fastest guy. Now, could they do that with Tony? Sure, they haven't done a lot with it yet, and he hasn't been able to stay in the field consistently, and he also got hurt in the title game. So I do believe he's questionable as the injury report came out, but I feel like he was going to go. The other receiver we need to talk about is Juju. Juju Smith-Schuster had a concussion. He was in concussion protocol. He's now questionable. I think he's going to play. He'll play, and that really helps their offense. They need those guys on the field. I think that with the time they had, with 2 weeks, I'm sure the backup guys that played in the AFC title game and played really well, obviously will have a lot of time to practice and be involved. I think they're going to get a lot of more tight end sets and a lot more tight end personnel. So they're going to have a lot of people involved in that and their schemes and stuff like that. But if they can keep Juju and Kadarius Toney healthy throughout the game, that's going to be a big positive for them. Another injury it's important to keep an eye on was Snead got a concussion, their best corner. He got hurt in the AFC title game with a concussion. He was in concussion protocol. That leaves them with a bunch of rookies. It'd be nice to have a veteran for them in the secondary, especially someone that can match up with A.J. Brown. Otherwise, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith may tear up their rookie corners. They played really great against the Bengals, but that's because they were putting a lot of pressure on Joe Burrow and his bad offensive line. It wasn't like he was having a lot of time to throw. Obviously, the Eagles have a better offensive line and have more stability there. So let's talk about a few things that I noticed for these teams as far as trends and stuff that they went through in the regular season. So I went through the Eagles. They only had one loss at full health, right? And that was against the Commanders. They lost 32-21 at home to a division rival. And that was the only time that Jalen Hurts started a game and lost this year, which is pretty phenomenal. But they lost that game. They had 4 turnovers in the game, 2 fumbles, 2 key fumbles in the second half that really turned the tide. Jalen Hurts also threw a pick. Their defense played well enough to win the game. The Commanders were able to run the ball, keep the clock, had some long drives, some penalties that didn't go their way. It's hard to go undefeated, folks. That's why it's only happened twice in the regular season, or else they may have had a chance to go undefeated in the regular season. It's hard. It's hard to do that. But in that game, they turned the ball turnovers a lot. They lost to the Cowboys. Obviously, when they lost that game, also had 4 turnovers, and that was with Minshew. He did play decently well. He did have some turnovers in that game that kind of cost them, but they turned the ball over 4 and lost by 6. And then the loss to the Saints at home. In that game, the Saints pass rush really put a lot of pressure on Minshew, but that wasn't Jalen Hurts. So not a lot to learn. Like I said, when I did look through their schedule, they haven't played a lot of great quarterbacks this year. They had the best quarterback they played was, I guess you'd have to say, Dak Prescott. And they only played him once. Remember, he was hurt in their first matchup. That was Cooper Rush playing them in week 5. So, and they played him with a bad, Jalen Hurts was out that game. So it's interesting thing. They did play against Aaron Rodgers, but we all know Aaron Rodgers wasn't himself. The Packers weren't good this year. And he got hurt in that game, didn't finish that game. Jordan Love actually played the fourth quarter. So they haven't played a top 5 quarterback. Remember, they played 4 AFC teams. They played Trevor Lawrence, and he got up early on them, but he started turning the ball over, and that was early in the season. That was probably the best quarterback from the AFC they played. They played the Titans. They blew them out 35-10. They played the Texans. We know how garbage they are. They did play the Colts in a tough game, but it took a last-minute touchdown to win 17-16 against the Colts. Colts had one of the weirdest seasons I've ever seen. Remember, they beat the Chiefs in week 2. They beat the Chiefs in week 2. They lost to the Eagles by 1, and they ended up with 4 wins. The Colts. What a crazy season they had, right? And they still don't know who their head coach is. Or who the quarterback is next year. Yuck. Anyways, but let's get into the Kansas City schedule. Now, Kansas City's 3 losses. Like I said, they lost to the Colts. They lost to the Colts in Indy in a game where Mahomes had a couple turnovers, and the Colts were able to drive down and get a last-minute touchdown and didn't leave Mahomes any time left on the clock to win that game. Right? We thought that was going to be the Colts we thought we were going to see all year. That team that really played really good defense, and Matt Ryan was able to orchestrate some drives and move the ball a little bit. Obviously, that didn't end up being the case for the Colts. But they lost that game. They lost at home to the Bills in week 6, 27-24. In that game, Bills score a late touchdown. Mahomes gets the ball back, throws a pick. Bills get the ball, game over. Now, there wasn't a lot of time on the clock for Mahomes to do a lot of magic, but he did throw a pick. Really, really on Mahomes-like. But the Bills beat them in the regular season the second time. And then, of course, the most famous one is the Bengals beating the Chiefs for the 3rd straight time prior to the AFC Championship loss, where the Bengals beat the Chiefs again. The key thing in that game was the Bengals had a 3-point lead. Chiefs are driving deep in territory. It's 3rd and 3. It's second down. They get sacked on 3rd down. It was by Asai, by the way. Big sack for Joseph Asai, the guy who made the blunder in the AFC title of the game, pushing Mahomes out of bounds, put him in field goal range. But the curious thing about it is it's 4th and 3, and after the sack, and It's a 55-yard field goal, and Butker can make big kicks, and he's made a lot of big kicks for the Chiefs, especially from distance. But Andy Reid decides to go with the kicker instead of letting Mahomes go up for 4th and 3 down 3. He kicks a 55-yarder, misses it. Bengals get the ball and don't give it back up, and Mahomes never gets a second chance. I don't think that if given that scenario again, especially in the Super Bowl, or if he was in that scenario in playoffs, he takes the ball out of Mahomes' hands. I don't think that's going to be the case. And I don't really think that I don't think either team will do that. I think both these teams will be very hyper aggressive on 4th downs. Eagles have been one of the most aggressive teams on 4th down all year. So I think that's going to be interesting case. I think both of them will be. I forgot to mention, and when talking about injuries, about Patrick Mahomes' high ankle sprain. Now, anybody that knows about ankle sprains, you think of a regular ankle sprain, you roll your ankle this way. High ankle sprain, you roll it inside. It gets on the interior part of your leg. Really causes a lot of pain through the ankle, but he's had an extra 2 weeks to heal. He has been practicing everything. He's said he feels good. Obviously, there was a couple points in the AFC title game where he moved to his left and really had to plant the leg to make a throw, and it showed it some pain. I think he'll be better, but the problem will be that pass rush. So we talked about the Eagles pass rush, and they do have one. It was from scenarios where they are in the lead, and they did have a lot of kind of like balloon their numbers. Obviously, they had a really good pass rushing game against the 49ers, though. So, but against the Chiefs, the 2 weak points they have on their offensive line are their tackles. Now, they're not bad tackles. Orlando Brown Jr. is good, a left tackle, but the best part of their line is with Creed Humphrey and Joe Tooney and Smith. Their interior line is the best part of their line. Their tackles are the weak point. So they can get some pressure on the outside against Mahomes. And his tendency is to roll. I went back and watched Super Bowl 54 and 55. And Super Bowl 55 against the Bucs, he was under pressure and duress all game long. And he tried to roll and extend plays. And instead of getting rid of the ball and trying another plays, he got himself caught in some bad situations. A lot of 3rd down and longs where he just really wanted to make a play. He made some amazing throws, and his receivers also let him down a couple plays. There's that crazy picture of him almost being parallel to the ground and getting a ball off and then hitting a receiver in the 1 yard line. Would have been a touchdown because it went through the defender's hand. Receiver wasn't ready for it. Would have been an unbelievable play if that receiver catches it. Maybe the best play we've ever seen. If you haven't seen that play, look it up. Patrick Mahomes almost parallel to the ground, still throwing the ball completely accurate. And that's why some are arguing he could be the best of all time eventually because of plays like that. But the key for him is that in that game, and he even attested to it, he was trying to do too much. And this is something with quarterback play. Tom Brady is, old pocket passing quarterbacks that didn't have mobility. Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, those guys that just couldn't move very much. They would either try to slide in the pocket, but they weren't going to roll out long and try to extend the plays. It's best to throw the ball away, not turn it over, not get yourself hurt, not put yourself in a bad position, and move on to the next play. And Mahomes really did a good job of that in the AFC title game. He did a lot of his throwing from the pocket. He got rid of the ball really quickly. And I think that's going to be their game plan against the Eagles in this game. So a few weird stats that I found. I want to also bring these up. These are pretty interesting. And I found 3 interesting stats that may swing some people about who they think is going to win the Super Bowl. And I found them to be very, very funny and very interesting. It's just they're coincidences, if you believe in trends, if you believe in weird stats. But here's 3 of them, okay? They're pretty interesting. So the last 9 regular season MVPs who played in the Super Bowl lost. The last 9 regular season MVPs who played in the Super Bowl all lost. Let me give you who those were. And these are who's who, right? So Super Bowl 52, Tom Brady was MVP of that year, lost to the Eagles. Super Bowl 51, Matt Ryan was regular season MVP, lost to the Patriots. Super Bowl 50, Cam Newton, MVP, loses to the Broncos. Super Bowl 48, Peyton Manning loses to the Seahawks. Super Bowl 44, Peyton Manning again, loses to the Saints. Super Bowl 42, Tom Brady, undefeated regular season MVP, loses to the Giants. And then a few ones, if you remember, he goes back a little bit. Sean Alexander, Super Bowl 40, loses to the Steelers. Super Bowl 37, Rich Gannon loses to the Bucks. Super Bowl 36, Kurt Warner loses to the Patriots where they start their dynasty. Interesting, right? Interesting. That's just kind of a weird trend, right? Also, last 6 passing yards leaders lost in the Super Bowl. Who's the passing yards leader this year? Patrick Mahomes. Some of these are duplicates, right? Super Bowl 52, Tom Brady. Super Bowl 48, Peyton Manning. Super Bowl 42, Tom Brady again. Super Bowl 37, Rich Gannon. And then we're going all the way back to Dan Marino and his infamous 48 touchdown passing season in 1984 with the Dolphins, where they faced the 49ers in Super Bowl 20. They lost. But that's the last 6 passing yards leaders to play in the Super Bowl, all lost. Right? Weird trend. Next one. Eagles are the 5th team to win both the divisional and conference championship rounds by at least 21 points. Okay? The previous 4 all won the Super Bowl. The 78 Steelers, who beat the Cowboys in the Super Bowl. The 85 Bears, who beat the Patriots. Obviously, everybody remembers the 85 Bears. And then the 88 and 89 49ers and their dominating run in the late 80s. Obviously, Joe Montana-led 49ers team that almost went to 3 Super Bowls in a row. Those teams. So they dominated in the playoffs, and the divisional and championship rounds just ran through them like butter. And guess what? They won the Super Bowl. And then another interesting fact, the 85 Bears and the 89 49ers, not only did they win the Super Bowl, they blew out their teams. Bears won 46-10. 49ers scored 55 on the Broncos team. They demolished those teams. So that's why a lot of people argue 89 49ers, 85 Bears, 2 of the greatest teams ever, right? So I found those 3 stats. I thought they were super interesting. The one thing you can correlate, obviously, with those 3 is they all point to an Eagles victory, right? They all point to the Eagles winning. So you hear all the stats we've gone through, all the stuff that kind of points to the Eagles. They're the healthier team. They've been the more dominant team all year long. They have the best defense. They have the best, probably, overall roster. The 2 areas that they are secondary in is coach. You're going to give Andy Reid, who's been to 3 Super Bowls, over 200 wins, tons of experience, and the best player, and that's Patrick Mahomes. And he's at the best, most important position as quarterback. Now, let's look at maybe a scenario that kind of reminds you of the Super Bowl, right? Where the other team has better coach, better quarterback, but not necessarily the best roster. And the first one, it's kind of funny. You think about Super Bowl 52 with the Eagles. Better quarterback, Tom Brady. He's MVP. Better coach, Bill Belichick. Against an Eagles with maybe a better roster. And who came out victorious? Eagles. Right? How about Super Bowl 48 with Peyton Manning, right? Peyton Manning and a bunch of stars on offense. Known stars. Demaryius Thomas, Wes Welker. Right? Just dominating the regular season against the Seahawks. A bunch of young guys, but they're not proven yet. They're in the first couple of years. A quarterback who wins that game in a blowout fashion, the Seahawks. So some recent history that shows maybe just having the best coach and best quarterback in this position was not a good roster to go behind it. Makes you think another thing to point towards the Eagles, right? Especially with their offensive line and their defensive line. I always talk about this too. If I'm building a team from scratch, what am I doing? If I'm building a team from scratch, I'm developing offensive line and defensive line. They're the most important two units in football. And then I'm going to quarterback. Of course, finding a quarterback is hard to do. But if you have a quarterback with a shady offensive line, you're not going to get anywhere. And if you can't play defense or stop the run in this league, it's still tried and true. You can't win football games. So that's how I build my team. And the Eagles have done that. Their offensive line is amazing. Their front seven is great. They have followed the recipe. But there's one thing I've been saying all football season long. And I'm going to ride this to the end because I'm a man of my word, and I'm going to stick with it. I said this year was a Mahomes revenge year. He's gotten his revenge. He beat the Bengals. Just angry about that AFC title game last year and how he played. They were up so mad. But I've said it's been a Mahomes revenge year all year long, and it doesn't come back as a Mahomes revenge year until he wins the Super Bowl. And that's why I'm picking the Chiefs 30-24. That's my score. 30-24. Chiefs 30, Eagles 24. It may be a dumb pick. All the trends are pointing towards Eagles. They're healthier. They're better. But you know what? I'm a Mahomes believer. I'm an Andy Reid believer. I do think the coaching mismatch is an important one. And I do think if the Chiefs can put the Eagles in a position where they have to come from behind, which they've only had to do once this year, and they barely did it. If the Chiefs get points early, if they put them up, and the Eagles have to throw the ball, they have to abandon their run game, what they are, their whole personality. This is going to be a really hard game for the Eagles to come back from. Now, I know the Chiefs' defense isn't amazing, right? But I just don't trust that Jalen Hurts is going to be able to throw the ball and win this game himself with his arm. If I'm the Chiefs, I load the box, I stop the run. That's my whole focus, and I make Jalen Hurts beat me, and I get Mahomes in good situations and get him up. If they get up, they win this game. That's why I think it'll be 30-24. Reid gets his second Super Bowl and cements himself as one of the greatest coaches of all time. So getting that second Super Bowl win makes him a Hall of Fame coach. I think he's already a Hall of Fame coach, leading two different franchises to Super Bowls. But getting a second Super Bowl win really puts him in, a top 10 head coach thing. So, all right. So I've been doing a poor job of looking at chat. So let me look at some of the stuff that has been. I'm going to have to get used to it. I have to get used to the chat. So I did bring up the Colts. And funny thing, someone said Brady unretire and go for the Colts. I think Brady is retired for good. Unfortunately, he's not going to come back. I do think Mahomes' health is paramount, but I do think he's going to be healthy enough to play this game. And you know what? You're right. You're right, Wizards. Andy Reid is already a Hall of Famer for sure. I agree. Hall of Famer for sure. So, anyways, that's my pick. Like I said, I think that this game will be close in the first half. And I think teams will trade scores. I think then maybe the Chiefs make some adjustments and they get a lead in the third quarter. And that's when the pressure gets put on the Eagles and they're just not able to score enough. Maybe the Eagles have the ball late and just can't get it in the end zone. And that's why I like the idea of the Chiefs being up 6, Eagles having the ball and having to try to go down and score and just not able to win. So that's why I'm going 30-24. That's my Super Bowl pick. I hope everybody enjoyed today's podcast. I really appreciate it. We're still figuring out some few things. Please comment and ask questions. If you want to reach out to me, I have a Gmail. You can ask questions, and that's at 41.theprez@gmail.com. Or find me on Twitter at 41_theprez. And that's it for everyone. Thanks you for watching this week. And I will probably do a pod on Monday. So Super Bowl reaction Monday, and then we'll try to do Friday. I think that's what we're going to do going forward. That's the plan tentatively right now, is to do Mondays and Fridays. So coming out of the weekend on Monday, do a pod, and then for like a reaction of what happened on the weekend, I'll think sports. And then on Friday, going into the weekend, as we have our big matchups, whether that's basketball or what going forward. Obviously, this will be the end of the NFL season, and we'll move to a lot of things we discuss. Obviously, there's free agency coming up in the NFL, and obviously the draft. NFL free agency or offseason is really pretty filled with a lot of news. So there'll be a lot of things to discuss, a lot of things to dissect. Obviously, NBA is getting close to the playoffs. We got March Madness coming up, college football in the fall. A lot of things to happen on this pod. So again, super excited to keep doing this. Please give me your comments and questions, and I'll do my best to answer them next week's pod if you have them. And please reach out. And if you have any tips or constructive criticisms. I am here for it. I want to get better at this. I want to do this. And I look forward to hearing from all of you. So have a great Super Bowl weekend. Have a great weekend. Be safe and take care.